IVM.
Hello, folks. Welcome to The Last Brand Standing, presented by Bank of Baroda. It's a podcast where we discuss some of the most iconic brand rivalries from the Indian marketplace. In this episode, we are looking at how an unknown brand from Gujarat, Nirma, was able to teach Hindustan Unilever Limited some marketing lessons. So let's introduce the players in the ring. First up, we have Hindustan Unilever, as it is known today, and Hindustan Lever Limited, as it was known back in the day. Now, HUL is a subsidiary of the global FMCG giant, massive giant, Unilever. Unilever entered India all the way back during the British Raj, and post India's independence, it merged some three group companies to form what we know today as HUL. Now, by the 60s and 70s, British Raj so ho gaya tha, but by the 60s and 70s, HUL was already a massive force across all the FMCG categories, stuff like tea from Brook Bond, Lipton, all the way to personal care like Ponds, to our main category, detergents. So by the 70s, HUL was massive, respected. Like today, a job with HUL was a dream job. It is today, it was back then. And detergents was a large category for HUL. Surf was among the biggest brands. But Surf was also very expensive and aimed at an urban middle class to upper middle class audience, not really the rural people, because at that point of time, people didn't understand the rural market. Maybe it was too small, but it was a huge fortune. So below that entire middle class and upper middle class audience, there was a massive fortune. And at this point, let's get in our second player, Nirma. Incorporated in 1972 by a chemist, Karsanbhai Patel. Okay, just remember that name because believe me, he's going to take the battle to HUL. Karsanbhai Patel figured that there is a gap in this detergent market between cheap soap bars, because that was what was used to wash your clothes. If you go back to that era, or even a lot of people do today, they just use soap bars and they ghiss out their clothes, use a bag to beat it clean. And between that cheap soap bar and expensive detergent like Surf, like what was manufactured by HUL, there's this massive gap. Now, see, we need an entire episode to discuss the legendary business acumen and the sheer hard work of Karsanbhai Patel. But I'll just suffice, to say that through the 70s and the 80s, Karsanbhai waged and he actually won a huge war against HUL in the category of detergents. And this was based on two things. First was obviously pricing. Like I said, there was a nice gap between Sastawala and Mehngawala. You'll understand the Sastawala very soon. So if Surf sold at 13 rupees per kilo, okay, back in the 70s, Nirma was just 4 kilos. That's the first aspect. Second aspect, advertising. Now here, all you 90s kids, okay, I'm sure that maybe you weren't born back in the 70s or in the 80s, you would remember the memorable washing powder Nirma campaign. Remember this is the 80s, guys, okay, when Appu and Asian Games and all that, it ushered in this era of color television, and advertising really took off. Ambi is going to get into all of that. So I know that although most of you weren't born at that point of time, but there is no way on God so that you don't know Nirma's TV campaign. Just Google it here. Their ad, okay, their TV ad featured Sangeeta Bijlani, okay, the Miss India winner of 1980. So using this, Nirma really took the battle to HUL, and just over 10 years, from 1975 to 1987, market shares reversed. HUL had a 41% market share of detergents in 1975. By 87, their share dipped to just 7%. Nirma went from 12% in 77 to 62% in 87. And Nirma wasn't the only one. Now, obviously, if Nirma is doing so well, then other guys will also come up. So people like Ghadi, Fena, all came in. And HUL was seeing its market share slowly being taken away. Now we're going to talk about how this entire battle played out right till the point in 1987 when HUL was forced to wake up. Ambi, over to you. Tell me one thing here. How does a businessman from Gujarat, okay, take on the mighty HUL? What was this battle like? What really worked to take Nirma all the way, on top to 87? Let's get into this now.
Yeah, Anupam, this is like a great, almost a legendary David with a Goliath kind of a story. And, Karsanbhai's story is really epitome of, I think, the Indian entrepreneurship. I mean, who was Karsanbhai? Karsanbhai was a was a chemist working in the Gujarat government, and he figured out using his own, literally, probably in the garage, he figured out that he could make a detergent at a much lower price than HUL. So he managed to create a composition which was HUL used to put, I think, linear alkyl benzene was one of those, agents, very high concentration, probably 24, 25%. And he said, you don't need that level of concentration in India if I can replace it with some other foaming agent. So he mixed it with soda ash. Soda ash was easily available. So he literally made this little concoction in his house, took it around, selling it from his cycle. I mean, that's the legend of Ahmedabad. And he took it around the market, selling it in his cycle.
Literally door to door.
And yeah, literally door to door. And then he found that, it was the thing was taking off. Now, why did Hindustan Lever is full of smart people, let's be clear, right? How come they missed this opportunity? Because let's see, Hindustan Lever, was probably one of the first companies to understand rural market. So they had they had brought this brand called Sunlight, which was basically a soap, washing soap, a yellow colored washing soap. And they sold it very successfully all across India. It was a very big brand. Then, interestingly, it was Hindustan Lever which pioneered the concept of a detergent bar. The detergents around the world was only sold as powders. But they created the detergent bar called Rin. Rin is a product, guys, really made in India, made for India. So it was a great, great product. But somehow they missed this opportunity that, look, between the detergent bar like Rin and Surf, there is a huge market. And this market may actually be able to use a detergent powder of a different composition. So Karsanbhai figured this out, and he figured it that doesn't need to put 24% active matter. He can put 6% active matter, and he composed in such a way the cost of manufacturing the product was much lower, and he did some interesting stuff. For example, those days any factory which uses electrical power had to pay excise duty, and there was a rule that if you don't use electrical power, you don't pay excise duty. So if those of you may remember, Nirma for many, many years used to be sold in transparent yellow plastic bags, and the bags were not sealed. They were stapled. Why were they stapled? Because you staple it manually. So Nirma is an amazing story because they employed thousands of women to literally mix the ingredients in huge vessels and then pack the ingredient in those packets and then staple them. By doing this, Karsanbhai managed to keep costs low. And therefore, he could offer an attractive enough product at a great, great, great price. So it's a very, very interesting thing on how a chemist managed to understand that obviously he must have had some pretty smart advisors. And he figured out that, look, I don't need all this big stuff. I can do it in a very simple way. So he started in Ahmedabad, then he expanded all over Gujarat, and then he set up a plant to make this in a large way. I mean, thousands of people are employed. And then he said, I need just a great product and great price is not enough. I mean, the whole classical 4 pieces of marketing, right? He had a product which he had tested very well, which was accepted. It was like 1/4 or 1/3 the price of Surf. Consumers were very happy with it. Though it was stapled, it was looking like remember, I mean, those days.
Yeah.
Surf used to come in this attractive blue box.
Very nice colors.
Beautiful with that star burst, and you cut open the edge and you pour it, and
sometimes they used to throw in some free gifts also out there. It would just coming, it would just fall out of the box. Ambi, tell me one thing here. I want you to give our listeners a bit of a flavor about these products on both the sides. Huh? Now, Surf to be understood. Because what do these products do? I mean, there is detergent, there is washing powder, and I'm sure that there is some technical stuff out there to differentiate one from the other. Whereas Nirma, the entire thing for quote unquote cheap washing powder was always that it left blisters in your hands. कि वो सस्ता है लेकिन अभी क्या करें? For just walk our listeners through this product face to face, head to head. What were they like?
Well, Indians are used to washing clothes by putting it, hammering it on the rock and
Yeah,
rubbing
yeah.
some hard stuff on it. So it was a challenge to convert them from that hard, putting a soap to doing what is called a bucket wash. So the detergent those days we didn't have washing machines, so you had to
Mm.
literally take the clothes, put the water, put detergent, mix the thing, let it soak, and then take it out and then dry it. Right? Even teaching that to Indian consumers is tough. So a lot of companies, I remember, I think Swastik Industries did it very successfully for a brand called Sway. They had this a Sway bucket offer. You buy 2 packs of Sway and you get a free bucket. But unfortunately, it was priced in such a way that the bucket turned out to be very expensive, and the retailer sold it separately, and it became a
Huh.
bit of a mess. But
Okay.
Surf managed to do that very well, and they managed to convert a fair number of upper income, middle income Indians to use a powdered product, in a bucket and then wash their clothes that way. Now, what does Surf contain? What does Nirma contain? Surf contains probably 24% of linear alkyl benzene or one of those foaming agents. Nirma contains less of that, but Nirma has, soda ash, which provides some kind of thing. And this whole thing about does Nirma really burn your hand, etc., is not. I think it was blown up a bit. Okay, I don't think it really causes any harm, because I know people, some of my friends in some of these big companies, including Lever, used to say, "Look, I'm actually mixing Nirma and Surf and using it for washing my clothes." Some people felt, you don't need the kind of detergent power that a Surf offers. So Nirma said, "Look, now I'm going to go national. So I have a product, I have great pricing, and now I go national." So then Karsanbhai decided to unleash the power of media. So, okay, that was a time when Doordarshan was ruling the roost. There was only one television channel, and they basically whole country watched, you know, Doordarshan, which is, all your Hindi feature film on Saturdays and Sundays, and
Ramayana
then
Mahabharat.
and your Chitrahar and Chaya Geet, and then you had
Yeah.
Bunyad and Hum Log and all these
Khandan
programs.
and yeah, of course.
And Nirma took the power of television to take their brand all over India.
Did they have any fancy foreign media agency to give them advice at that
Well,
point?
no, they did not. Actually, I did work for a bit on the Nirma account when they did an IPO, but Nirma
Mm.
planning and buying was really done by Nirma themselves, which a trusted
Wow.
person. So they used to do extremely smart buying, and very simple media buy,
Sure,
right?
sure,
No,
sure,
no,
sure.
not very complicated stuff. Very simple. Take the number one, number two program, have your message coming bang, 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 and that worked. The whole country was singing washing powder, Nirma, washing powder, Nirma, दूध सी
ये
सफेदी
सब
निरमा
फेथ
से
इन
आए,
निर्मम से आई रंगीन.
रंगीन कपड़े खिलखिल जाए. Look at the thing he's done,
We still
right?
remember
दूध
it,
सी
man. We
सफ
still remember.
दूध सी सफेदी, what, and then रंगीन कपड़े खिलखिल जाए, you know, Rema, Shushma, Sumita,
I don't know. Jaya, Jaya, and all.
Rekha,
Yeah, yeah.
Jaya, Shushma,
Oh man, yeah.
and look at it in the Nirma ad. They will show the woman putting Nirma with a spoon into the bucket, and
Mm.
small amounts. Whereas the surf ad used to be part of it legally cleared and all that, so used to put a lot of detergent.
Mm.
And then the Nirma woman used to get into an auto rickshaw and go, right? No car for her, no taxi for her. It was bloody auto rickshaw. But like
It
you
worked.
said, this worked. Okay. Nirma took off like a rocket. So people in Bombay, people sitting in Lever House, those days they used to sit in Church Gate.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, they
Back pay
could not.
reclamation. Back pay reclamation. Yes, I
Correct.
remember it.
Near
Yeah,
Church Gate Station says,
yeah.
the early stages, they said, look, this is not even a detergent powder. What is this guy doing? Right? And so they tried convincing themselves that, look, yeah, this is a washing powder. Now, this is catering to a different segment, right? And so let's not get too worried. We should protect surf, and let's not get too worried about it. And they kept kind of telling themselves that this is not really a competition. This is not really detergent powder. This is actually a washing powder, and all kinds of stuff. And in fact, I remember that Shun Hussain, the legendary marketing director of Hindustan Unilever, making a
Yeah.
presentation in the Ad Asia. I think it was 1990 Ad Asia in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. And he started the presentation by putting up a photograph of Karsanbhai Patel. And he said, "This man has taught me more marketing than anyone else in my life." So
Super.
they had kept, willfully dismissing Nirma is not competition, Nirma is not competition. And
Yeah.
suddenly one day they woke up and said, wow,
That's and we're
yeah,
going to get into that waking up part on the other side of this break, folks. Don't go anywhere. That was part one of this big business battle of HUL versus Nirma, Surf and Rin versus Nirma, whatever. We got into one ad campaign, okay? The very memorable washing powder Nirma ad campaign. On the other side of this break, well, we're going to get into one more fairly memorable ad campaign that Levers gave it back. Because believe me, guys, Levers is not going to take this lying down. Such a big category, such a big share of revenues and of profits, and suddenly one guy from Gujarat just comes and walks away and takes it away. Nahi boss, aisa nahi chalta hai. HUL did fight back, and we're going to get into all of that on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Folks, welcome back to the second part of HUL, Hindustan Unilever versus Nirma. On the first part, we spoke about what started in 1972, went through the 70s, and all the way till 1987, when Nirma became a massive brand in washing powder. Just to recap those market shares for you, in 1987, HUL's market share of detergents was down to just 7% from 41% in 75. Nirma, the same time, roughly the same time, went from 12% in 77 to 62% in 87. But HUL was not going to take this huge loss lying down, and HUL responded back in kind with another memorable ad campaign that Ambi is going to tell you about. Now, after having ignored the rural market for so long and to let go of such a huge, piece of the pie to a local player, enough was enough. Remember that Nirma was actually gearing up to take on HUL in all categories, okay, like soaps. So HUL put in place what was called Project Sting. I'm going to give the credit for this piece of information to Shashank Shah in his book Win-Win Corporation. He speaks about Project Sting. Sting stands for Strategy to Inhibit Nirma Growth. This happened in 1987. The late 80s, we moved from black and white to color in 84. And like Ambi said, Hamlo, Bunyad, Khandan, all of that, and this excitement on the corporate front. So HUL launched Wheel washing bar in 88 after, huge R&D. And they actually closed the difference in pricing also between their product and Nirma. And that wasn't all.
Washing powder. Wheel washing powder.
Wheel washing powder. Sorry about that. The Wheel brand, I guess, probably. Then HUL also added its mighty promotion and all that stuff. So I'll let Ambi talk about that entire part of how they fought back. But from 87 to 90, this worked. In just a few years, Wheel was a success and became the second largest brand in India and the second largest brand for HUL. 12 years later, by 2002, HUL and Nirma had equal shares. I'll just finish off my intro on this piece of information to you. Imagine that from 87, when HUL was at just 7%. In 15 years, all the way, it went all the way up to 38%, and Nirma from 62% went all the way down to 38%. Again, source of this data is Shashank Shah in his book Win-Win Corporations. Ambi, over to you. Now tell us how HUL fought back. How did this drama play out?
So I left you in the last part with Shunu Sen talking about how he learned more from marketing from Karsanbhai Patel than anyone else. So I'll tell you why he said that. So initially, the denizens at Lever House in back pay reclamation kept denying the fact that Nirma is really competition. But this went on for several years till someone woke up, and I'm sure it was probably Shunu Sen who woke up. So they first did one thing. They said, look, we need to, surf was in steep decline. So they said, look, we need to do something about surf. So the first round of advertising for surf was to say that, surf 1 kilo is equal to 3 kilo of Nirma. And they tried justifying it by pouring surf into a jar. And surf actually is different types of crystals. So it's got a lot of flakiness. As a result, 1 kilo of surf will go into 2 jars of detergent, whereas 1 kilo of Nirma will go into 1 jar. So they tried showing that, look, actually, when you're not putting by weight, you're putting it by scoops. And 2 scoops of Nirma is needed to get 1 scoop of. That didn't work. And finally, the advertising genius, Alec Padamseed, said, we can't do this kind of very rational stuff. And he created this character called Lalita. Very insightful, and he's written about it in his book Double Life, which is out of print. So when I was writing my book, Nawab Noodles, I wanted a copy of it. So I managed to find it at Churchgate, where there used to be wonderful old bookshops.
Oh,
I
yeah.
found it, went through it. So he describes the story. He thought this idea that you need to change the argument. You cannot keep saying 1 kilo is equal to 2 kilos. Stuff that's not going to work. So he created this character called Lalitaji, who goes out into the market, and when the shopkeeper is trying to palm off something, she says no, and she says सस्ती चीज और अच्छी चीज में फर्क होता है, and इसीलिए मैं अच्छी चीज लेती हूँ. So दिमाग यूज करके, so this whole thing about दिमाग यूज करके मैं अच्छी चीज लेती हूँ, and they said she is using surf because surf अच्छी चीज है.
Yeah. The ad line, if I remember, was "Surf की खरीदारी में समझदारी है."
Absolutely, you remember it was very 30 years ago, right?
It was, yeah.
So he changed the argument. He didn't want to talk about 1 kilo into 2 kilos. Surf की खरीदारी में समझदारी है.
She was showed as this very stingy person who used to haggle on everything, but she would not compromise on surf.
Quality and surf.
Quality. Yeah.
So
Amazing,
in the book, Alec writes about it. This film, they made the film, and the marketing team said, this woman is coming through as a Gorgon. She's coming through as a wild kind of a person, as a very outwardly aggressive person. And, all these brand types, including myself, we talk of brand character and tone and value and all that. They said, look, this surf will become a very, very rude brand. You'll start, everyone will identify Lalita Aviji with surf. And, it'll become a very rude brand. We'll become a very aggressive brand. We don't want that. So let's not do the ad. Fortunately for Alec Padamsee, Shunu Sen was out of town. And when he came back, the team told, look, Alec has done this. We don't want to run it. And Alec called Shunu and said, look, can I show it to you? So it's there in the book, wonderfully described. So he goes home with an old VHS tape, plays the ad. And the team is there. Shunu says, what's the problem? Team says, no, the woman is coming through us too aggressive. And, So he says, look, Alec, what do you suggest? So Alec added this line in the end, which some advertising freaks will remember. In the end, the Lalita ji lady says, "Beta Ravi," because the kid is taking some vegetable and eating it, and so she said, "Beta Ravi." So they added the line at the end to soften the character. Okay, and the team said, "Okay, if the agency believes it will work, we'll go with the agency," because the brand was going down, right?
Yeah.
And they ran the campaign. They started running the campaign. The brand's decline stopped. Okay, the brand's decline stopped, and it started slowly inching up. But it was not going to catch up with Nirma in the next 50 years. So that's when I think the team there said, no, we need to fight Nirma. It's a different battle plan. And they said, look, why don't we make a washing powder? Who says in the world that a powder should have 24% active matter? If Nirma can make something which Indian consumers are accepting as a good product, why can't we make the same thing and probably make it slightly better? Looking at Nirma, they started reverse engineering the product. And I was told, it's an anecdote, that I was told that, there was a brand called Wheel, which was lying around somewhere. They pulled out that Wheel brand and they created Wheel detergent powder. A Wheel detergent powder, they decided to make it different from Nirma. So it was not yellow in color, it was green in color. And as a master stroke, I don't know where they got it from, they added Nimbu. Okay, they added a little bit of Nimbu fragrance. And they figured out that some of the excise benefit Nirma was getting, they will not be able to manage. They said, look, what are the big costs of a bulky product like Nirma or like Wheel is that you're shipping it from, say, Bombay or Ahmedabad all over India is very expensive. So I'm told Wheel said, look, Hindustan Unilever said, look, why don't we make it in different plants? So they actually decided to do a decentralized manufacturing of Wheel. And they launched it, like you said, they launched it, 1980?
Somewhere there,
yeah. 88,
yeah. 80s, yeah.
Yeah, they launched it in 88, 89. And in fact, they launched it with an ad, which kind of hinted at Nirma. So this guy comes back, he enters the house, and his wife looks at him, and he says, "Naukri fir nahi mili." So the wife was very upset. Kyun? And he says, "Mere kapde meli thi." Literally saying my shirt was yellow. And so the wife says, what do I do? So he says, you do something. At which stage this poor lady looks up. And in advertising, we have this device called the voice of God. So the voice of God from up above tells her, Pesh hai, naya wheel, Nimbu ke Shakti ke saath, and it falls on her hand. She takes the wheel, washes the guy's shirt, it becomes white. He wears it, goes, gets the job, right? And then he comes and picks her up and dances, right? So they very clearly said, Mele kapde means yellow detergent, Safed kapde means wheel. They also, in the advertising, they hinted the fact that wheel is softer on the hands than Nirma. But I think that was not really a big issue. But
Sure.
yeah, but I think they heavy duty advertising on Doordarshan again. Very good value product, virtually same price as Nirma. Obviously, Nirma was giving the retailers 20% margin, which Levers could not give because Levers had its own system of selling. So they gave a much lower margin, but they had a great system of distribution. I think they in fact created a parallel distribution to carry this product because it was a bulky product, huge volumes, and they carried it right through India. And Wheel literally stopped the Nirma Armageddon. Okay, by then Nirma had become very big. Nirma had got into washing, not only washing powder, they had come with a washing cake, which was yellow colored cake, detergent cake. They also had a soap brand. They called it, Saundarya Sabun Nirma. The Karsanbhai's branding things are very simple. Very washing powder Nirma, Saundarya Sabun Nirma, right? Very simple thing. And Saundarya Sabun Nirma was a huge brand. We worked on the IPO campaign in I think
94.
94.
Nirma's IPO was 94. Yeah.
We did that campaign, and I remember at that time Nirma, Saundarya Sabun Nirma was a huge brand. It was even bigger than Lux, which is again a very big US brand. But
it managed to take on Lux. Okay.
Yeah. But with the launch of Wheel, HUL got their mojo back. They had Surf, which is a premium product. They had Wheel to fight Nirma. They had Wheel detergent cake again to fight Nirma, and they had Rin detergent cake, which is a premium detergent cake. And with that, I mean, later they launched Rin powder. They launched other products, but they have their portfolio all lined up. And that is why I think somewhere Shunu Sen said that, look, I learned so much from Karsanbhai Patel on this. So Karsanbhai Patel, I mean, I've dealt with him a few times.
You met him actually?
Yeah. In fact, I presented to him.
Wow.
I've dealt with him and very humble person today.
What's he like? I mean, does he have a very because nowadays अभी boss अगर promoter के पास personality नहीं है तो कोई seriously.
What
was it like at that time?
Oh, बहुत ही antithesis है यार Anupam. He's totally antithesis. I remember we worked on a toothpaste, which he was thinking of launching.
Toothpaste?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he was very clear. ये price है तो मैं बेचूंगा, नहीं तो मैं नहीं बेच सकता. My consumer should get my product at half the price of Colgate, and I should give the retailer twice the margin Colgate gives. If after that I have profits, then I can succeed. Otherwise, I can't succeed. So he had very clear understanding of where, he may not understand all your brand prism and brand pyramid and all that, but he knew Nirma brand means consumer will want it at this price. They will not pay a higher price. But Wheel was a master move. I mean, it slowed down, and I think I hand you back to talk of the lessons. Right?
So I actually want to end this segment with two things, Ambi. Okay. Now, see, we've covered the distance. I think from Nirma was incorporated in 1972, and Karsanbhai was an engineer with one of the Gujarat government companies. Poor guy, did so much of effort, and then finally in '87 he reached peak. By 2002 he was at about 38%. There is one thing that I want to ask you out here. Now, India's rural market for most part of 70s, 80s, and I think even 90s, nobody really cared. Early 2000s, and again, I remember this again thanks to the great Bunty Bubbly, which I think was a lesson in advertising on its own. By 2000s, everybody woke up. He was fortune at bottom of pyramid, and I think every management consultant in the world had woken up to this concept of India's rural demand. As we end the second part now, just give us some backdrop about the kya hua exactly. I mean, why did Nirma, I think, was one example of how Nirma showed that, boss, this is the strength of rural India or small town India to levers, which I believe at that point of time didn't really care, like you said. Just give us a backdrop as we end the second part.
Okay, so I think, rural, this CK Prahlad's work on Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid kind of opened up everyone's eyes about rural India. But let's be clear, Hindustan Lever knew about rural India way before anyone else. They used to make products like, little 5 paise pack of Brook Pond tea and all that for many, many, many years. But the real problem with rural India, 70% of India lives there, 30% live in urban India. The real problem with rural India is, some several lakh villages. And it's very expensive to reach your product to those villages. The cost of servicing the demand is killing. So levers used to service the demand from the more affluent village clusters. But levers used to give 5% margin to the retailer and another 5% margin to the distributor.
Okay.
With 10% margin, it is expensive to send the product. What Nirma did was gave them 20% margin. As a result, the headache of taking the product to the rural area is your problem, right? So the margin managed to carry the product into the rural area, and the advertising created the pull. Okay, that's a unique model. Nirma did not have thousands of sales reps and thousands of people going to shops. They allowed the wholesale market to take care because they gave a large, margin. Today, it is different. Even big companies have figured out you cannot service all the rural demand, but almost 30-40% of rural demand you can service profitably, which means you can actually send a van with the material, deliver it, and actually make profit out of it. Good old days, companies used to have these van operations. Even when I was in my marketing days in Boots, we used to encourage in certain markets for the territory manager to do van operation, which means take the van with all the medicines and visit, 20 villages outside a town, right? But those van operations are more seeding. You cannot sustain it. So as a result, what you do is once you seed the product, for example, you give 1,000 retailers, let's say Colder and Strepsils and Bernal, when it runs out, you expect the guy to travel to the city and pick it up. Right? Because it's impossible to service that demand. So that was the problem. But Nirma managed to crack it, I think, more with a very high margin they gave to the retailer.
Sure.
And retail and wholesale trade as a combination worked. And it was a very attractive product. It was a very, very attractively priced product, perfect for a rural market with a 6-7 rupee ticket size. Anyone could buy it. So that was the lesson.
Yeah. The lessons are on the other side. That's how HUL fought back, and what a fight back. To split the market eventually was a great achievement for both the companies. So I think there are lessons from there, and folks, we'll get back to those lessons on the other side of this break in the third and final part of HUL versus Nirma. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We spoke about how this war started, how this battle started all the way in the 70s, 80s, and how Nirma took the battle to levers, how levers gave it back. We're done with the battle, folks. The lessons now. Okay, so now, obviously, if you're wondering what happened to levers and what happened to Nirma, here are some numbers for you. HUL, as we know, grew from strength to strength. Okay, in 2001 itself, 20 years ago, its market cap was a massive 50,000 crores. And today, 2020, its market cap is 10 times that, 5 lakh crores. Okay, you can check out BSE India's website for the numbers on that. Just imagine a large company becoming even larger in 20 years. That's how Hindustan Unilever has grown over the last 20 years since this battle happened and since it regained share back from Nirma. You're asking, what about Nirma? You don't hear too much about it. As you know, we would tell you that Karsanbhai is very, very media shy. It's very difficult to get too many interviews about him. You have a lot of stories about him, but Nirma as such did an IPO in 1994 and it delisted its shares in 2010. Okay, so that's a grand existence of all of 16 years on the exchanges. But boy, is the company still around? Okay, as per its website, it still manufactures consumer products like soaps and detergents. But more importantly, it is into industrial products like soda ash, benzene, sulfuric acid, and it's a huge company. FY19 sales at more than 6,000 crores. No wonder. Guess what? Karsanbhai Patel is a billionaire. Estimated net worth of $3.3 billions as per Forbes on 24 June 2020. So it looks like a lot of people benefited from this. It doesn't look like there was any loser as such. Ambi, over to you here. What are the lessons? First of all, how do you take on Goliath? You're literally a nobody. You come from nowhere. not only do you take on levers, you actually win the bloody battle here. Let's just start from here.
Yeah, I think, this is a great lesson, for all of us that people say, no, you can't take on giant like Unilever. They'll crush you, they will pulverize you, etc., etc., etc. But, with the Nirma story, you realize, someone from a very humble background. He's not, Karsanbhai Patel is a first generation billionaire, like you said. I mean, he is from a very humble background. He managed to start a business, scale it, and then, so it just goes to show that while Unilever is huge, very difficult to fight, but if you have a good product combination based on a keen consumer insight, what was the consumer insight? Karsanbhai knew his consumer wanted to use surf but cannot afford it. So he figured out a way of creating a product which will give somewhat the performance of surf at one third the price. He did the same thing with soap. He gave a product comparable to Lux at half the price. Then I remember I told you he tried doing the same thing with toothpaste. It didn't pan out well. In fact, I've spoken about it in one of the episodes of my Sponge podcast. He also tried doing the same thing with shampoos, but did not pan out well. But then after, I think that goes to show that if you have an interesting proposition, you can succeed. Look at it. Fair and Lovely, huge fairness brand, but from somewhere comes a company which creates a fairness cream for men. And that becomes, I don't know how big it is today, probably 1,000 crore brand. Or someone sitting in Tamil Nadu decide that I want to sell shampoo in a sachet. And he figures out that if I make sachet in small scale industry, I will avoid paying excise duty of 65%. And he launched a brand called Velvet. And then his brother took over and C.K. Ranganathan launched Chick shampoo. And
Sure.
Chick at one time was almost half the size of Sunsilk. Right? So, so if you can figure out a consumer insight and then tailor a product and a brand and use marketing smartly, I think you can still succeed. And when you see, so the second lesson is when you see someone like Unilever coming back, what do you do? Do you continue to throw money at it and keep fighting? So there are various options, right? One is, and Unilever start coming after you, what's your exit strategy? Captain Cook, which was a very successful salt and an atta brand, which I was associated for several years, they said, look, we can't fight Unilever, so we'll exit. So they sold the brand. They sold the brand to Best Foods, and the promoters exited at a fairly high valuation. Right? So that is one, you exited. Nirma tried doing too many things. Nirma tried going upmarket. They started launching Super Nirma, etc. That didn't work. And then they figured out maybe we need to be happy with what we have, but get into other businesses. They bought a pharma company. They are into pharmaceuticals. They set up a not-for-profit university where, Karsanbhai himself is involved. I remember going for a convocation and he was there for the event. And of course, now I think Nirma has also got into cement.
It has. Lafarge, I think they were bidding for some plants on the cement side. Yeah.
They've launched, I think the brand is called Nirma Tech or something like that.
Okay.
Right? So they got into other products and they got into other. Sure. And like you said, they are a very successful company being run by his son and his son-in-law. And so if you have a right combination of product and you are driven on a great insight, a small company moves very fast. So Karsanbhai could actually do something and do it quickly because he was the single point decision maker.
No committees to take approval from.
Exactly. There is no this subcommittee and that committee and that subcommittee. And of course, there is a committee sitting in London, another committee sitting in Amsterdam.
Approval chahiye.
So he managed to do that. I think that's a great lesson for all of us. How person really from a big business family succeeded.
So, Ambi, next question है. देखो, अभी ऐसा है कि India, I think all of us know, is a very cost-conscious market. Okay, today also most of us would just switch from one app to the other. कि भाई इसमें deal कहाँ है, उसमें deal कहाँ है. I have no idea how people spend so much of their time just finding the best possible deal. 500 रुपए का product के लिए साला आधा 2 घंटा लोग they just go mad over getting the best deal on that. Is cost everything? I'm asking you this because we are talking about the bottom of the pyramid out here. And this obsession with cost. Now, you spoke about consumer insight on one side, okay? I want to ask you, I am asking you in fact, how important is the role of cost in all this? I mean, see, if it was offering a product at the cheapest cost, yeah, abhi wo to timeless hai. It would work in the 70s, it would work in the 80s, it works today also. Offer anything cheap. But that's not all, is it? What is the importance of cost out here?
Cost is important, but you cannot compare the success of say Nirma or Ghadi or Chick with that what is happening in the digital ecosystem. In the digital ecosystem, these guys are burning someone's cash.
Correct. Oh, big one. Yeah. I mean, you have some. Karsanbhai didn't have any venture capital money to blow.
Nothing. So he was not burning any cash. He said every day rokda kitna bana. So he had to make. So if you're a fighting brand like that, a low cost brand like that, you need to cut cost everywhere. Karsanbhai used to buy media on his own. So that media commission, he never used agencies. Right? He used to get ads made and then buy the ad and then used to run it himself.
He didn't go to the IIMs and get some flashy graduate.
No, he set up his own university. So he hired some of them. And it's a pretty good university. I mean, it's.
I'm sure
they have an MBA school. I remember going and talking to those kids the day they got inaugurated. But
Bright kids?
Yeah, bright kids. It's a lovely university. Very good university. Okay. So he said, look, why should I pay money for buying packaging? He makes his own packaging. Okay. He makes his own stuff. So if you're, you're saying, look, this is a very big selling brand. It sells at 100 rupees. But, a lot of consumers want it for 50 rupees. How do I make it for 50? And so you work back and say, I can change the formulation. I can change the packaging. I can change the cost. Karsanbhai didn't have a 20-member marketing team. No. There were two guys. I mean, the one guy literally and Karsanbhai's son-in-law used to deal with us and Karsanbhai's son got married, involved later. But, they were it. They take all the decisions. So everywhere he used to look at cost and keep very, very tight. I mean, that works for an entrepreneurial setup. I'm sure that will not work in a professional setup. So it's not just cost, but you got to make profit. In the current environment, people are burning cash, so you can get discounts. Yeah.
I mean, where did he get these cost insights from? I mean, did he just wake up one fine day and say, chalo, yahan pe cost kato, wahan pe cost kato? This kind of stuff requires a lot of insights. You do not get it easily because your competition will take it away the next day in the morning. This is India. अगर एक को मालूम पड़ जाता है तो सबको मालूम पड़ जाता है. What was his brain like? I shouldn't say was, but is like.
I think he's very intuitive. He used to understand his consumer extremely well. And he used to understand his retailer very well. He used to talk about retailers. He understood retailer. Or dukandar nahi rakhega. Mera product nahi rakhega. He used to understand them intuitively because probably he's come from that milieu.
Yeah,
he's from a middle class family. He's
very middle class. Yeah. I mean, come on, the guy goes cycling door to door. Yeah, come on, how get more middle class? Yeah, of course, and I mean that in a good way, obviously.
Yeah, and sometimes the presentation we used to make it in Hindi because he asked, "Kiska matlab kya hai?" And we used to study.
He used to sit himself personally in all the presentations.
Yeah, some of the meetings, we had to present to himself. So
okay.
I remember some discussions, So very intuitive. And I think India is full of Karsanbhais, and I wish we had more and more Karsanbhais in every single sector because we'll be so much more productive as a country.
Yeah. I mean, the first episode of our podcast, we spoke about Indica versus Maruti 800. Remember, that is again, Ratan Tata basically taking on the Japanese, and that was also a cost-to-cost thing. You yourself gave out, said how Maruti had to actually cut their prices to sell, to compete with the Tatas. And listen, just like in that case, in here also, I think everybody benefited, right? I mean, you have this kind of big battle. It doesn't look like anybody has lost out here. What do you know? So would you think that what kind of people benefited from this? What are the learnings that got shared and are now accepted wisdom in the industry from this battle? Because it's a big one, very big battle.
I think one of the this entire bottom of the pyramid has become very fashionable today. But it was this which started that kind of movement, right? So you cannot take and I'm surprised that Levers in fact pioneered with Rin cake. Rin detergent cake was created by Levers for India, but they missed on this detergent powder. The fact that you can actually make a washing powder at a much lower cost and sell it. So it's a great lesson for the whole corporate India that you can actually try and curate products for specific markets, test it, and then scale it up and go national. Sure. So, and even Nirma, let's be clear, was not really a big national brand. They had a very strong hold in the north markets. South were not strong for them.
Yeah, South is a tough market anyway.
Yeah, South is also more quality conscious and brand conscious, all the stuff, right? The North, they were dominating the North. And later, what Nirma stopped doing, Gadi started doing. And Gadi is equally successful, right? So I think they're great brands and great lessons, yeah.
Great. Last question. I want now this to move into an entrepreneurial mode, okay? Because you also know, India mein aisa, by India, in fact, any promoter or any businessman who has tasted success will obviously then want to get into all kinds of businesses. And so did Nirma. You know, it got into industrial products. It did God knows what. A lot of people would have bought a telecom license or tried to open a bank. Our man didn't do that, I think, very sensibly. What is it, what are the lessons of entrepreneurship out here? I'm asking this because Karsanbhai walked away and still is very, very successful. A lot of other businessmen in India, as you also know, tried, won to some extent and then just fizzled out. Some of them went bankrupt, some of them went whatnot. This guy managed to take on levers, one, diversified. The guy's got 3.3 billion. That's a lot of money. Any lessons for entrepreneurship here? Last question.
Simplicity, man. I mean, there is this anecdote. I don't know how far it's true, but it's such a wonderful anecdote. Karsanbhai visited the lever house many years ago when Dadi Seth was the chairman.
Oh, legendary KB Dadi Seth. Yeah.
So he met Dadi Seth, and then they. I think Dadi Seth knew Gujarati very well, so they had a long conversation about general business and all that. And Karsanbhai walked out, and Dadi Seth said, "I will see you." He walked up to the lobby and asked, "Gadi suche?" So Karsanbhai said, "No." And he walked out. He walked onto the road. So Dadi Seth walked with him onto the road. And then Karsanbhai waves down one of those yellow and black
and yellow cap. Oh, yeah.
So Dadi Seth apparently asked him, "Karsanbhai, ye taxi mein?" So apparently Karsanbhai replied, "आप बड़े कंपनी में काम करते हो, मैं छोटा कंपनी वाला हूँ, मैं ये टैक्सी में ही जाता हूँ." I mean, that's a man for you, yeah.
Man, that is such a South Bombay tale, man. I mean, come on, Back Bay Reclamation, Lever House, those are areas like, it's got so many cabs and there are vada pav guys out there. To picture the great Dadi Seth, come on, HUL has always had legendary chairman, okay? Dadi Seth had his own share of battles that he fought. To picture this guy walking down with a very humble Gujarati businessman, this guy walking into a cab, he said that. He actually said that.
Yeah, he took a cab. Karsanbhai took a yellow-black cab and probably went to Dalal Street or whatever to meet someone.
Maybe Churchgate station, took a train and went somewhere.
So Churchgate, you would have walked. You would have walked to Churchgate.
Yeah, from Back Bay, from there, it's just a 10-minute walk. I know. HDFC's office is out there. Akashvani used to be out there, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yeah, I used to be there.
Oh, man. This was fun. Ambi, thank you so much. Folks,
thank you, Anupam. That was fun. Yeah, that was fun.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Last Brand Standing presented by Bank of Baroda. Our next episode is also FMCG, but we are looking at the great biscuit battle. It's ITC versus Britannia. Don't forget to tune in. And if you like this podcast, you can check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. Also, you can follow me, Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter.
And me, Ambi Parmeshwaran on Twitter @AmbiMGP.
That's a goodbye, folks. See you guys next time.